Hi, I'm Dave Dinkel. I'm here with a special series, 2-Minute Tips. And the question is, what if the seller doesn't close? The last one, 2 minutes, I just reviewed. I talked about what if the buyer doesn't close. But let's say the seller doesn't close. Now remember, you have a contract with the seller, and they have breached the contract. It's called specific performance. And you can run down to the courthouse and file a motion for specific performance, breach of contract. What's going to happen is you can be in the right. What the seller did is they took somebody else's offer and they moved on and closed. So let's say you go through the court system and it only takes you a few months. What do you have when you come out? You have a judgment against the seller that's gone. Try and collect a judgment against a seller that's not there or that is going to fight you in court. All you're going to do is spend a lot of money. The important thing is stay in touch with the seller. Inform the seller beforehand. When you sign the contract, say to them, I want you to understand something. It's very important. Other investors may come by because of your situation. I'm here to solve your problem with the pre-foreclosure, whatever it happens to be, with the divorce, the bankruptcy, with the probate, whatever it is, I'm going to do that for you and I'm going to close. Now, the thing you have to know is other investors will find out about this if they haven't already contacted you. Many of them will say, I already got 25 letters, 100 letters, something silly because those guys just mail. You're doing another level to get to them. But you have to say to them, these guys are going to offer you possibly even more money than I did, but they're not going to close. And what they're doing is fraudulent. They're inducing you into a fraudulent act, and you're going to have extended liability. Do not let it happen. As soon as somebody does that, call me up and tell me who they were, and I'll take care of it from my end. That typically will stop it in the beginning. But to some sellers, if they can get $1,000 more than you offered them, they don't care. They're going to take the $1,000. So now, what do? Well, there's what's called a notice of interest, memorandum of contract, an affidavit of interest, affidavit, memorandum of contract, whatever you want to call it. It's simply a document that's recorded in the public record that says, I have an equitable interest in the property because I have a signed and legitimate contract. If anybody closes, I'll sue their butts and sue everyone involved in it. That's pretty much what mine says. And for many, many years, that clouded the title when it was going to be transferred by the closing agent. They wouldn't close. And the closing agent would call me and say, hey, Dave, we need to release a lien on this property. I knew what they wanted. The seller typically said to me, Dave, I decided not to sell. I'm going to stay in the house. Well, they lied. Oh, gee, liars, sellers lying, hard to believe. All sellers are liars. All buyers are liars. So get over it. That's what you're going to face when you get into any industry, including this one. So what did I do? I believed them, but I filed a notice of interest. And when they called me to say I need to release a lien, I made a value judgment, whether it was worth going further to pursue it against the seller or just take some money and walk away. I'm going to say to you that oftentimes I'd say, not a problem. Send me a release and a check for the doc prep fee, and I'll file it myself. And they would say to me, doc prep fee? I said, yeah, doc prep fee. You guys have a doc prep fee for everything you put together. So do I. How much is it? $5,000. $5,000? Yeah. Now, what's the least I ever took and the most I ever took? $500, $7,500. So it's up to you to get whatever you can if you have to. But a big change is if the closing agent is an attorney and he issues his own title policies, he can do what's called writing over the notice of interest. So what good does it do you? It does nothing. It does nothing. It doesn't even slow the pen stroke on the closing. So what's the next level? First of all, the state of Florida found out that a couple of what were students of mine, they weren't really students of mine. They came to some of my classes, and they were students of a national guru. And they loved this concept so much, they ran back and signed contracts on any wholesale deal that came over, never closed on any of them, filed notice of interest on 27 properties in about a month and a half. So somebody went to the state and said, you got to make these things illegal. And they said, you don't have to honor the notice of interest. So we changed the name, memorandum of contract, changed it to an affidavit. So they go into the system, but they weren't stopping attorneys who were doing closings. So we had to go to the Thor's hammer. And the Thor hammer is very simply, boom, we file a list pendants on the property. Now, no one's going to close. I don't care who the attorney is. I don't care if he's a judge for the Florida Supreme Court. He's not going to close with a list pendants filed against the property. Now, how do we file a list pendants on a property where we don't have a note and a mortgage? That's a whole other thing. We just had one done by somebody, a student of mine in Mississippi contracted a property in Pensacola. And obviously the guy watched one of my videos, and because he was trying to steal the property, he didn't have a contract, but he filed a list pendants. Well, how did he file it? He filed it as a mechanic's lien, which we had thrown out in about 12 seconds. He just didn't know how to do it. Instead of having an attorney do it, most attorneys won't know how. But when you find one that does, you have something that's very powerful in your grips. You're not going to abuse it, but you better use it to get them to come to closing. That's what it's all about. So first of all, their limit of liability is not their earnest money deposit. You have the earnest money deposit up. Their limit of liability is what the profit would have been on the deal. So we did one about a year ago. Listen to these red flags. The seller comes in, says, oh, by the way, I have a power of attorney for my wife who's in Nigeria. He's a Nigerian. Little red flags are starting away. Power of attorney. Power of attorney can be canceled literally in 30 seconds or less. So when you go to closing, even if the person is in the hospital, they're not going to close unless that person can in fact sign documents. And oftentimes they will not allow a person to sign documents in a hospital. So whatever the person is that has the power of attorney, he has the ability to lose that in a millisecond. So closing agents are very uncomfortable with either limited or general power of attorneys. At any rate, he decides not to close. Well, the reason he decided not to close is very simple. As we get close to closing, he says, by the way, the closing agents tell me that my wife has to come and sign from Nigeria. And we said, that's standard operating procedures. You can't get a title policy without it, blah, blah, blah. He says, she's not coming unless you fly her here. We said, well, she doesn't have to fly there. She only has to go to the consulate and get the documents notarized. And no. She's not going to sell unless you fly her here. She's 30 miles outside of whatever the capital of Nigeria is. They have to send a horse and cart to get her, and she's going to come to the United States, and we're not going to close. We're not paying for her to come to the United States, so we didn't close. Now, what happened? We instantly filed a lis penens, went to court, and the judge had never seen a lis penens against anything other than a mortgage and a note. So it took a little bit of an educational process, but here's the deal. Not only did we get the property, but all our attorney's fees that we had to put up were paid by the seller. So it was a killer deal. It was a killer deal from the start. If your attorney tells you it can't be done, you need to find another attorney that will tell you how he can do it. And if every one of them tells you it can't be done, then I can't help you. I said to my attorney the other day, how many of these have you done since the beginning of the year? He said, I think 12 or 14. That's the Thor's hammer that brings the seller to closing, or else you'll get the deal. That's what it comes down to. I mentioned before that the student came in and he said, how's my lis penens going? And the attorney said, you don't understand how the legal system works. You're not going to get the property in 2 weeks or a month. It could be months and months before they hear your case. Because here where we are, the judicial system is like a little bit, busy. And he's all hopped up about, hey, I paid the filing fee for the foreclosure, is what it is. And when am I going to get some results? Well, you're not going to get any results quickly. You have to serve the individual. I did one that took us almost 4 months to find them. Great story. Tax deed pre-sale coming up. I'm mentioning a lot of tax deeds here. This is like a Thursday. Following Thursday, it's going to sale. It's going to lose 2 duplexes. Student has it under contract for $60,000 on each of the duplexes. Amount of taxes owed are $29,000 and $21,000. 2 different duplexes. What's the options here? The options are very simple. You got to pay the taxes. Now, do you pay it by closing before that date, or do you pay it and then close afterwards? Well, the lien search couldn't come back until after the tax deed sale. So I said to the student, I'll go ahead and pay off the taxes on both properties, get a note and a mortgage on the property that's due in 30 days, and then you'll close the following week. Everybody's going to be happy. Now, I already had them sold for $160,000 apiece. So you're looking at $120,000 profit on each one, literally. At the closing table, as documents are being signed by the 2 parties on title, father and son, there's banging on the door, and a woman rushes in and says, I have a court order. I'm the wife that hasn't been paid in 8 years alimony, and I have the authorization from the court. All proceeds from these 2 sales go to me. She's right. All the proceeds of the sale go to her. So the question is, what do the son and father gain by closing? Nothing. They're not going to get any money. So they negotiate around, nothing happens. So I said, the student's on the phone, he's to me, and I said, tell her I'm going to foreclose on the property. She's very savvy. She said, go ahead and foreclose. I'm going to get the overage. She's absolutely right. And so I foreclosed. So what happened? The father lives in Atlanta, and to serve him, because he didn't want to be served, took months to get him to be served. Now, could we have done it by publishing it in the public? Yeah, if you're an attorney, don't get into it. I didn't do it right. We did, and my attorney did it, and it took us months to get them served and to get the properties to a foreclosure sale. And they were sold. And they sold, each one of them sold for $140,000 at the foreclosure sale. So what did the student get? Nothing. What did I get? 18% of my money while it was in foreclosure. The attorney got his attorney's fees, and we got paid. Would I do it again? Yes. I do it again simply because there's little or no risk on my part because I have a note and a mortgage on the property. I guess the point I'm making here is just because everything appears to be very obvious, an attorney has done title work on the property and you're set to close, doesn't mean everything is wonderful. And you're going to have surprises like that. So what did the student do? Did he say, man, I didn't expect this. This is terrible. This is real estate investing and it's work. No, he didn't quit. I just funded one 2 days ago for him. Did a buy and a sell. I did transactional funding. He netted $41,000. That's more than he made in a year and a half at what he used to do. The point here is you're going to have problems, but what you need to do is learn how to resolve the problems and then go on to the next one if you can't resolve it at all. All right, we're going on for the next 2-minute tip. Thanks very much.